Only one word describes what a tiger actually costs a zoo before it ever earns a dollar. Everything. A single tiger eats roughly 15 pounds of meat a day, which adds up to over 400 pounds a month. And that is just one animal in a collection that might hold 300 of them. A ticket that costs $30 does not come close to covering that. So somewhere between the entrance gate and the gift shop, a zoo has to find a way to turn a business, built on feeding some of the most expensive appetites on Earth into something that actually survives. Most people who try fail. The ones who succeed have figured out something the rest of the industry never learns in time. Picture a founder standing on an empty piece of land, holding architectural drawings for a zoo that does not exist yet. Before a single visitor ever buys a ticket, that person has already committed to spending an amount of money that would make most entrepreneurs walk away. Industry estimates put the cost of building a mid-sized zoo, one with a couple hundred animals across 20 or 30 acres, somewhere between $20 million and over $100 million. The land alone can run into the tens of millions depending on location. Because unlike almost any other business, a zoo needs space most companies would never think to ask for. Then come the enclosures. And this is where the number on the drawing board starts to feel unreal. A single naturalistic habitat for a species like a gorilla or an elephant, one with proper barriers, climate control, and enrichment features, can cost several $1,000,000 on its own. Multiply that across dozens of species, and a founder can burn through the entire opening budget before a single customer walks through the gate. And that number does not even include the animals themselves. A big cat, depending on how it is acquired, can cost anywhere from a few $1,000s to well over $100,000. Some of the rarest species cannot be purchased at all. They can only be borrowed through breeding, loan agreements with other accredited institutions, which means a founder is negotiating with other zoos before they have even opened their own. Before the spreadsheets take over the story, it is worth asking a simpler question, because it explains why anyone would attempt this in the first place. Why does a family drive an hour, pay for parking, and spend $100 on tickets just to look at animals they could watch for free on a nature documentary? The answer sits deep in human psychology. Watching a lion pace a few feet away triggers something a screen cannot replicate, because there is a difference between seeing danger and standing close enough to feel it might be real. For a child who has never left the city, seeing an elephant in person is not entertainment. It is a memory that gets carried for the rest of their life. Zoos are not really selling a look at an animal. They are selling proximity to something wild in a world that has become almost entirely tame, and people will pay a premium for that feeling every single time. That premium is where the real business begins. Ticket sales matter, and a well-located zoo can draw anywhere from 500,000 to several million visitors a year at prices ranging from $15 to $40. But tickets alone rarely cover the cost of keeping the lights on and the animals fed. The real profit shows up after someone has already walked through the gate. Food and beverage sales inside? A zoo can carry profit, margins north of 70%, because a captive audience with nowhere else to eat will pay whatever the menu says. Gift shops follow the same logic, turning a $3 stuffed animal into a $25 impulse purchase, positioned exactly where an excited child walks past it on the way out. Membership programs do something even smarter. They convert unpredictable ticket sales into steady income that arrives whether or not that member visits again all year. There is also a second economy running quietly behind the scenes. Film and television productions pay to rent animals or locations for documentaries and advertisements. Private events, weddings, and corporate parties happen after hours, charging a premium for the novelty of dinner next to a giraffe enclosure. Educational camps and behind the scenes. Tours charge hundreds of dollars per participant for experiences that cost the zoo relatively little beyond staff time. And for the largest institutions, breeding programs themselves become valuable, as rare offspring get transferred to other zoos in exchange for real money or equally valuable animals. Now picture that same founder a year later, standing in front of the same enclosures, except this time the bills have started arriving. This is the part of the business most people never see coming. And it is also the part that quietly kills more zoos than any public scandal ever does. Veterinary care for exotic animals is nothing like caring for a house pet. Specialists who understand large cats or marine mammals are rare, often commanding six-figure salaries, and a single surgery on an elephant can run into the tens of thousands of dollars. The animal cannot describe its symptoms, so every diagnosis becomes an expensive process of elimination. The food bill alone can exceed $1 million a year for a large collection, and it climbs even higher for species that require imported or specially prepared diets. Staffing adds another layer. Because a zoo needs trained keepers, security, groundskeepers, and educators, many of them holding certifications that push wages higher than most entertainment jobs, and insurance becomes its own quiet crisis. Because housing animals capable of catastrophic harm means liability, premiums that dwarf almost any comparable business, and a single incident can send those premiums climbing for years. If that stretch of the business feels relentless, that is because it is. This is the point where a lot of founders realize the drawings they signed off on look nothing like the checkbook they are staring at now. Some cut corners here, on care, on staffing, on enclosure upkeep, and that decision rarely stays hidden for long. Every business built on live animals carries risks most industries never have to plan for. Disease can move through a collection in days, sometimes forcing the closure of entire sections. Public perception has shifted hard over the past 2 decades, with growing scrutiny over animal welfare fueling protests and, in some cases, forced closures. Escapes, though rare, generate the kind of headlines that can end an institution overnight. And animals age and die, sometimes without warning, taking with them not just an emotional loss, but a financial one that can never be recovered. No case shows how fast public opinion can rewrite a business model faster than SeaWorld. For decades, the company built its identity around orca performances, drawing millions of visitors and generating billions in revenue. Then in 2013, a documentary called Blackfish told the story of Tilikum, an orca involved in the deaths of several trainers, and it reframed everything the public thought they knew about what happened behind those tanks. Attendance and stock value collapsed within a few years. SeaWorld ended its orca breeding program entirely and rebuilt its identity around education and conservation instead of spectacle. One film changed the entire trajectory of a company that had dominated its market for decades. The San Diego Zoo tells a very different story, and it starts with a decision most zoos never make. Rather than treating conservation as a costly obligation buried in a mission statement, the San Diego Zoo built its entire brand around it, founding what became the San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance and investing heavily in breeding programs for endangered species like the California condor, a bird that had fallen to fewer than 30 individuals left in the wild by the 1980s. That program brought the species back from the edge of extinction, and the zoo turned the story into its identity, not a footnote. Visitors were not just buying a ticket to see animals. They were buying into a mission with a measurable, tellable success story, and that story became more valuable than any exhibit the zoo could have built. Today, the institution generates hundreds of millions in annual revenue, proof that treating conservation as the product, not the marketing, can outperform spectacle in the long run. The mistake that kills most zoos is rarely one dramatic event. It is chronic underestimation. Founders who build an impressive enclosure, acquire an exciting animal, and only discover years later that they cannot sustain the ongoing cost of keeping it alive. Roadside zoos and underfunded facilities fall into this trap constantly, cutting corners that eventually surface, whether through a welfare investigation or a slow financial collapse. The second most common mistake is relying on ticket sales as the only real source of income, leaving the entire business exposed to bad weather, a slow season, or an economic downturn that keeps families home. So can owning a zoo actually make money? Yes, but only for those who treat it as a complex, multi-revenue enterprise rather than a ticket booth with animals inside it. The largest, best-managed zoos post net profit, margins in the range of 10 to 20% a year, a solid figure for any business, but one earned only through relentless cost control. Smaller zoos often survive on razor-thin margins, propped up by nonprofit status, donor support, and government subsidies that absorb some of the weight animal care puts on the balance sheet. What separates the zoos that last from the ones that quietly close within a decade is not the size of their opening budget or the rarity of their animals, It is whether they understood from day one that they were never really in the business of displaying animals. They were in the business of protecting something people are terrified of losing and charging admission to be part of that protection. Miss that distinction, and even the best-funded zoo eventually runs out of reasons for people to come back.